Hi, my name is Kevin Thomas, W1DED, and this is Q5 Ham Radio. Today I'm joined by Mike Case, W8MSC. We serve together on the POTA board. I'm really interested in learning more about his background and the founding of Parks on the Air, but in particular, where POTA is heading with the new board. Q5 is brought to you by DX Engineering, everything you need to get on the air. Mike, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
So, Mike, let's start at the ham radio beginning. When were you first licensed, and why did you get that license?
Yeah, I started in 2014, and I work in IT and telecommunications, so I have a technical background. It wasn't until my mid-career that I had the opportunity to run across a ham. He kind of sparked my interest in it. So I got licensed in 2014, and like most new hams, I joined my local club. So they said, "Hey, why don't you come out to field day?" And I said, "What's that?" I went to field day, and I absolutely loved it. So I love the outdoors. I camp, I hike. So the idea of combining ham radio and my love of the outdoors was, to me, it was a no-brainer. It was like two things that go great together. So I was hooked. Once a year wasn't going to be enough for me. So I really enjoyed the portable operations. I have to wait another year for this whole thing to happen again. It's like Christmas. That's not going to happen. That's not going to be enough for me. So I decided to look around, and at the time, there wasn't really a lot out there. I mean, I was finding some, islands on the air and summits on the air, but those not really going to be an option for me where I live. So I kept looking, and along comes National Parks on the Air, and that was in 2016. And that was the 100-year celebration for the National Park Service, and the ARRL was running that program, and it was going to be putting hams in the national parks, getting them on the air, and getting a way of scoring those and making a game out of it. So that's what I decided to do. I set some aggressive goals for myself. Like, I had just got my general, and I knew that I wanted to activate all parks in Michigan. And at the time, I think there were 7 national park units. And I set that goal of activating each one of them. And that was included some of the tougher ones, like QRP and solar power, in order to do Isle Royal. I was really looking for a lot of material online and not finding a lot. What I was finding was really geared towards either the summits or how to set up a field day location for a club, like where to set up your generator tent, where do you set up your tower, and that just wasn't really suitable for what I was looking at. I was really kind of in the dark there, so I found in the Michigan group we had a lot of common interest in some of the activators, so we ended up having a small Facebook group that turned into a community, and we would communicate amongst each other with each other and say, "Hey, this is I'd get an email saying, "Hey, I see you activated this park. Can you give me any hints?" So it turned into a community.
So I've heard a lot of really positive things about NPOTA. Unfortunately, I wasn't relicensed by then. I didn't get relicensed till COVID, but it seems like there was a lot of energy around that. Unfortunately, that program ended after 1 year, and I've heard this story a number of times, particularly from Jason Johnson, W3AAX, who was one of the founders of Parks in the Air. Tell me about that timing when NPOTA closed and you're faced with, what do we do next?
Yeah, so NPOTA definitely was a shelf life to it. There was 1 year program, and once it was wrapping up towards the latter half of summer, everyone was kind of looking around and saying, what else can we do? And there wasn't really a whole lot of ideas at the time. So, like I said, with summits on the air, it's not an option for me. And, the islands on the air may not be things, there's various on the air programs, and they weren't really going to do it for me, or I think the community at large. So towards the end of the NPOTA, I was approached by a ham out of the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. His name was Bill Radke. He was a conservation officer as well as a ham. He was, I believe, at one point the Michigan Section Emergency MCOM coordinator. And he saw what was happening with NPOTA, and he said to the Michigan DNR, it's like, why don't we do that for Michigan as well? Why don't we do that for the state parks? So he, along with a couple other people in Michigan leadership, decided to start that program. And I was recruited and said, "Hey, I see you're a active Michigan activator. Why don't you, would you like to join us?" And I said, "Sure, I can help out. I've got an IT background." So I was able to join the Michigan program and help establish what would become a 3-year program. And that's what they wanted to set up so that it had a finite shelf life. So I was involved with the setup of the IT of the servers, programming of the back end, the website, some of the social media advertising as well, but getting involved with designing the rules for that. One of the things they wanted to do was, like I said, have a 3-year shelf life. They didn't want it to go on ad nauseum because they didn't want to have that responsibility. Part of this was to get the Michigan State Parks into the other programs database, WWFF. That was the most similar at the time to NPOTA. So I reached out to Jason W3AAX and was working with him to get the Michigan State Parks loaded into that program. So I became acquainted with him at that time. And he's like, yeah, well, we're interested in starting a national program. Would you be interested? And so I signed up for that as well. So I said, yeah, I'm working on this Michigan thing as well. And we've discovered some changes to the rules that we might think would be a good fit for the new whatever it was going to be. I think we were calling it just brainstorm at the time. So we decided to take what was live with the Michigan State Parks program and use that for the Parks on the Air database and rules changes. So we were able to actually see what the Michigan program was doing and use that kind of as a guinea pig or a beta test for some of the rules.
So, Mike, I'm pretty familiar with the genesis story of Parks on the Air and know many of the players that helped get it going. But for the sake of the audience, would you go through some of the names and call signs that were part of that early group getting Parks on the Air started?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like I was an activator in Michigan, and I quickly met Tom Martin, W8TAM, and we exchanged information and became friends pretty quickly. Similar backgrounds, similar interests, and such. He introduced me to some of the other people that were being recruited by Jason. Jason being the public front face of this. He was the administrator. He was the main cheerleader and such. But I worked with Vance Martin, N3VEM. He and I basically did the back end development for the initial POTA launch. We even started on a server in Tom's basement. It was a very small system. So Vance and I were using LampStack for the development of the program, and that's basically an older style front end, middleware, and back end. And it was running on Tom's server in his basement. So we developed this and went live with it in early, can't remember the date, but we thought, hey, if we got maybe 1,000 people from the NPOTA community to buy into our little program, we would consider that a success. So that we didn't have any idea that it was going to scale out to where it did.
Well, it continues to amaze me that you guys, really a very small group, put together a program that had just explosive growth later on. And I want to talk about that. As the program grew in volume, and it grew pretty quickly, what did that mean from an IT standpoint, just keeping up with it?
Sure. Yeah, we had discovered pretty quickly that, that there was a large demand for what we were doing, and there was a big growth, and we were bringing in some additional volunteers. We're fortunate in the hobby to have a lot of very technically minded people, and had some professional IT and developers were able to join us in what we were doing. So Colby and Jeremy were instrumental in helping scale us out of that simple LampStack into a cloud-based infrastructure. So we were able to fully implement like a microservices style design. And that was able to get us to where we're at today. And we've still got things that we're doing future facing. So we were able to bring on a number of people that were able to help us scale that to where it's at.
So beyond the explosive growth, which obviously surprised you and the team, you designed a system for 1,000 people and it grew beyond that. What other surprises did you experience in that first 5 or 6 years?
When we designed it, we decided to standardize on logs, and we wanted to use the ADIF standard for the log submission. And we just had to troubleshoot quite a few logs in order to get them to process and load into our system. It never ceases to amaze me how badly mangled some of those logs were and how they generated the log files. And we had to go back and forth a number of times with some of the developers of those programs to clarify or get bug fixes in, because it was frustrating because the activators would upload their log and it wouldn't process right. So we would go around and around on this bug fix. And we did that for quite a while, but we got to the point where I think we've found most of the problems, and that they process well enough now.
So, Mike, I want you to now fast forward ahead. You've gotten the program started. It's had explosive growth. At some point, there was a decision made that Jason Johnson, as the founder and the president, was going to step aside, and finally Parks in the Air was going to have a formal board. Tell me about the thought process behind that and how that developed.
He had decided that he was not going to be able to continue in the position. I was one of the original developers and one of the founders, so I had a lot of institutional knowledge. And I think it was important for us to go to a traditional board style management of a large corporation. So we were actively recruiting people with the experience necessary to run a business, and we were able to find enough people to constitute a board. And now we are in the process of converting a lot of the legacy incorporations, the accounts, the finances, all that over to the new legal structure. So yeah, it's been a long road to hoe, but we've gotten to the point where I think our board is now onboarded. We've got a lot of experience, and we got a lot of vision for the future.
So tell me more about that. What is your hope for the POTA board in the future?
Well, I've been doing this since the beginning, and it's exhausting, but it's also extremely rewarding to see where it's gone. I don't want to be a single point of failure, so I'm trying to transition what I know into the new board, doing essentially a brain dump. Getting the new board members onboarded and up to speed with what has gone by since our foundation. So my vision is to get the new board members up to speed on what POTA has done in the past, and that we can start planning for the future.
Well, I certainly see this firsthand as being part of the board, that there is a lot of institutional knowledge, but it's fragmented. There's pieces everywhere. And this is not uncommon even for a business. When you have fast, explosive growth, then sometimes the things aren't documented as well as they could be, or people move on. So when that happens, there are gaps in the knowledge base. So I certainly see that and understand that, and I think that we've done a good job of starting to get that institutional knowledge documented, get the governance in place. But what are the other challenges facing Parks in the Air moving forward beyond the institutional knowledge, documentation, governance?
Well, we're still trying to adapt to the various modifications to parks as other programs and countries are onboarded. There's going to be differences in what the top level governments have versus a second level government, and how they account for and track their parks. So example is, if we bring on a new country, we have to get them to fit into our existing data model, where we've used the top two tiers of government to organize our parks. So we try and have to suss that out and get those loaded into the system so that we have the right level of park and experience for that program. And that's going to continue to be our main challenge, I think, going forward.
And obviously, or maybe it's not obvious to everybody, but Parks in the Air has been working behind the scenes on a new IT version, a new program. I think there's a lot of excitement around that. I've talked to James VE3JLN, who is leading that effort. I know you're very intimately involved with that. Can you give us a little bit of a glimpse of what lies ahead in that area?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the growing pains that we identified pretty quickly was the awards. They're very CPU intensive to generate. So as we added more and more countries, locations, parks, more QSOs are being loaded into the system every month to month. It's become very processor intensive. So one of the key improvements that was highlighted pretty quickly was optimized queries. And so our database would be completely rebuilt and redesigned to allow a larger number of QSOs. Part of that also goes into how we originally scaled out the program. When we started, it was a US only program. All our parks started with K. That was the ham radio prefix we picked for the program, and that's what we started with in Park 1, Park 2, and onward. as we added more and more countries, we kind of didn't really think about it. We didn't really know how to scale to a lot of the other countries because some of those country codes with the ham, oh, I'm sorry, some of those countries use ham radio prefixes that are not straightforward. Some of them are, a couple characters and sometimes they're modified. So we decided to back off that and we wanted to standardize our programs and locations based on a well-defined global standard, and that being ISO 2188-2, if memory serves. And that was already built to allow a top-level government and a second-level government underneath. So that would allow us to have, for example, US-Michigan for where I'm at. So that gives us a two-tier hierarchy for the park organizations. Nothing else that we were looking at had that. So we decided to get rid of the ham radio prefixes and convert everything over to the ISO standard. And that took a monumental amount of work. Thanks, James, helping out with that. But that kind of set the foundation to rebuild the POTA infrastructure now that we can organize our programs and parks according to a hierarchy.
Mike, what else will we see out of the newly developed software?
Speed improvement. Of course, it's going to help us with processing the awards, as I mentioned.
So, Mike, I know that we have 2 forums set up for the Dayton Hamvention. I'm really excited about that. On Saturday, we have a forum where the entire board will be there to do a short presentation, but primarily answer questions from the audience. So if you're watching this and you have questions for the board, please send them our way, and we'll make sure that we include them on the list. But as important, on Sunday, we have a forum where you and Tom Martin will be presenting the new IT system that's going to be rolled out. So just a footnote for everybody, if you're in Dayton, please try to attend both of those. And if you want more information about the software development, you'll get them there on Sunday. And please try to attend on Saturday. Any closing thoughts for us, Mike, as we close up?
Yeah, so I guess thanks everyone who's played in this little game that we made. Very grateful to feel that they spent their time and money and talent to do this. I came at it from a perspective of what would have helped me when I was a new ham. And I think that it's gotten a little bit of traction and other people find value in it. So thank you. And again, it's just a gateway into the ham radio hobby. It's not a be all end all. There's a lot of other things that you can do that are ham adjacent. And I found that, getting involved with this, it led me into something that I wouldn't have expected when I started out, and you never know where it's going to go. Just, try it out and, give it a chance.
Well, I've got to say, Mike, many of us really appreciate the effort that you and Tom Martin and Jason Johnson put into creating POTA. It was really my entry back into ham radio back in 2022, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I know a lot of other people are feeling the same way. That thank God for the 3 of you and others that were part of that. I've been talking to Mike Case, W8MSC. He's on the board of POTA. You can meet him in person at the Dayton Hamvention. Please put on your calendar the POTA forum on Saturday and another following up on Sunday. 73.